The Oscars, the biggest night in Hollywood. Millions are watching live across every time zone on Earth. And somewhere in the middle of the opening monologue, a producer slipped a note onto the stage that was about to turn the most glamorous room in television into the most politically charged moment of the year. Jimmy Kimmel looked at it, looked at the audience, and decided to do exactly what he had been told not to do. The Dolby Theater was operating at full Hollywood wattage that night. Every seat is filled, every camera is polished. The kind of event where the lighting department has been working for 3 days to make sure that every inch of the stage looks like the inside of a dream that costs more money than most people will see in a lifetime. Emma Stone was there, Bradley Cooper, every name that carries weight in that specific universe, sitting in the dark in their finest, waiting for the show to begin. Kimmel walked out to the kind of applause that only that particular room can generate, the sound of an industry celebrating itself, warm and enormous and slightly self-congratulatory in the way that only Hollywood can be without anyone finding it strange. He moved to the microphone, settled into his rhythm, and the monologue began the way Oscars monologues always begin, with jokes about the films, the politics of the nominations, the specific texture of celebrity that fills that room every year. Then a producer appeared in the wing, a note, passed with the quiet urgency of someone who needs to deliver information without disrupting the broadcast. The note said that the President of the United States had just posted a Truth Social attack calling Kimmel the worst Oscars host in history. The note also said, "Don't engage, don't give him the attention." Kimmel read the note, looked at the audience, reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "Okay," he said, holding it up. "See if you can guess who posted this on Tuesday." He cleared his throat. Then he read it. Every word, the no talent, the less than average person trying too hard to be something he is not and never can be. The suggestion that he be replaced by a washed-up ABC talent who would make everyone on stage look bigger, stronger, and more glamorous. The 3 words at the end, "Make America Great Again." He lowered the phone, looked out at the room. "Thank you, President Trump." A pause. "I'm surprised you're still up. Isn't it past your jail time?" The Dolby Theater detonated, not the polite, measured applause of an audience responding to a decent joke. The full, unguarded, spontaneous eruption of 1,200 people who could not believe they had just watched what they had just watched. Emma Stone's face, Bradley Cooper's face. People are turning to their neighbors with expressions caught somewhere between shock and pure joy. The sound rolled up from the floor and hit the ceiling and kept going. Kimmel stood there and let it happen. He did not look surprised. He did not look victorious. He looked like a man who had done the simple, obvious thing and was mildly amused that everyone seemed so startled by it. Here is what actually happened in that moment, underneath the laughter. A man who had spent decades building a public identity around the idea of controlling the narrative, of dominating every room he entered, of ensuring that attention always moved in the direction he chose, had watched a late-night broadcast, felt something, picked up a device, and typed. He had handed his words to the host of the show he was attacking. He had delivered them directly to the stage he was trying to diminish. He had given Kimmel the material, the timing, and the platform simultaneously. The power dynamic did not shift in that moment. It simply became visible. Because the truth is that a man who posts about a television host 11 minutes after the broadcast ends on the East Coast has not been dominating that host. He has been watching him. And the moment Kimmel read those words back to the room, calmly, word for word, with the tone of someone reading the minutes from a meeting that did not go well, the audience understood that the watching had been happening for a long time, and that the person who thought they were observing had actually been the subject the whole time. The next morning, every major entertainment and news outlet ran the same story with slightly different headlines and the exact same substance. The president watches Oscars, gets roasted by the host, live, on stage, in front of the world. By the time Kimmel sat down for his own show the following night, the clip had been viewed tens of millions of times. He walked out to his desk with the particular energy of a man who has had a very good week and is about to discuss it. "We've had a hell of a couple of weeks," he said, "but I did get some exciting news this weekend." He let a beat pass. According to a new poll, a serious poll, a real polling organization, or they were before this, I am more popular than the President of the United States. The audience responded with the specific delight of people who had already seen the numbers and were waiting for someone to say it out loud. Kimmel nodded. "Considering the fact that I am not a convicted felon, not a documented associate of Jeffrey Epstein, and have never paid off a porn star or sent a team of government employees into a park to separate an elderly woman from her grandchildren, I feel like my numbers should perhaps be higher than they are." He looked directly into the camera. Finding a toenail in your salad has a 7-point lead over Donald Trump. The White House response arrived that afternoon. Not a tweet, not a social media post, an official statement, printed on letterhead, sent to media outlets through formal communications channels. A document produced by the staff of the executive branch of the United States government, dedicated entirely to the approval ratings of a late-night comedy show host. The statement noted, with the specific dignity of an official communication, that over 77 million Americans had cast their votes for the president. It noted that Jimmy Kimmel prayed every night for a fraction of that support. It noted that his ratings had dropped 64% in the previous week. It ended with the word sad. Kimmel held it up. The White House, the actual White House, issued an official press release about my television ratings. He set the paper down. Let that sit. The audience was already laughing, but Kimmel's expression had the quality it gets when something is both funny and genuinely worth paying attention to. Because buried inside the absurdity of a presidential communications office responding to a comedian's poll numbers was something that deserved to be named clearly. The most powerful office on earth had been rattled enough by a joke to produce formal paperwork about it. That is not the behavior of something that is winning. That is the behavior of something that cannot stop checking the score. While Kimmel was processing the official communique from the executive branch, Stephen Colbert was working on a different angle. The White House ballroom, not a metaphor, an actual construction project. A backhoe had been dispatched to the East Wing. A chunk of the building had been removed. The project was described in public statements as an enhancement, a long overdue addition that would allow the White House to host events without resorting to tents on the lawn when foreign dignitaries visited. Colbert produced the receipts with the efficiency of someone who had been keeping a very organized file. The previous summer, a specific interview, the promise, on camera, in clear language. The construction would not touch the existing building, would be near it, would pay total respect to the existing structure. Quote, "It's my favorite place. I love it." Then, the backhoe footage. "We are not giving him the security deposit back," Colbert said. The audience's laughter had the quality it gets when something is presented so plainly that the joke essentially writes itself. Colbert's particular genius has always been this. He makes the audience laugh at the absurdity before they have fully registered the underlying reality. By the time the reality arrives, the audience has been softened up by the comedy, which means it lands harder, not softer. The Treasury Department, whose offices are directly adjacent to the demolition site, had quietly instructed employees not to share photographs of the construction, an instruction issued without explanation, without announcement, the kind of quiet administrative directive that tends to suggest the people issuing it are aware of how the photographs would be received. Not generally something you tell people, Colbert noted, when you're proud of what's happening. But both hosts had been circling something larger than ballrooms and approval ratings. Kimmel named it directly. You know what else is sad? The President of the United States has a lower approval rating than Diddy and diarrhea. He waited for the audience to settle. If he's looking to improve those numbers, and I know he cares deeply about this sort of thing, I have a suggestion. Release the Epstein files. The crowd reacted the way crowds react when something is said that everyone has been thinking and nobody has been saying plainly enough. 77% of Americans want the Epstein files released, Kimmel continued. 100% of our American presidents do not. He is treating those files like the grumpy neighbor on Halloween who turns off all the lights and hopes the trick-or-treaters will assume nobody's home. He looked straight at the camera. Why are we building a $200 million ballroom in the White House? Is it possible, just possible, that he is doing it intentionally, so that we spend our time being angry about demolition instead of asking about the list? By the time he's out of office, the room went still for half a second. Not the stillness of discomfort, the stillness of recognition, the specific quiet that descends when a joke stops being a joke and becomes an accusation that nobody can quite argue with. The Ghislaine Maxwell moment arrived quietly, the way the most revealing moments tend to arrive. A CNN anchor, a straightforward question about pardons. Whether the president had considered clemency for Jeffrey Epstein's convicted accomplice, the woman found guilty of child sex trafficking, whose only remaining option for early release was a presidential pardon. The man who has immediate and confident opinions on everything, on ratings, on talent, on construction projects, on poll numbers, on the quality of late-night comedy hosts, suddenly could not recall the name. "Who are we talking about?" The anchor repeated it. "You know, I haven't heard the name in so long. A pause. I'll have to take a look at it. I have a lot of people who've asked me for pardons. He mentioned another name, someone entirely unrelated. The anchor reminded him that the woman in question had been convicted of child sex trafficking. Yeah, I'm going to have to take a look. I'll ask DOJ. The same DOJ run by his personal legal appointees. Kimmel played the clip, let it run to its end, then looked at his audience. Trump, on everything, instantly. Suddenly cannot remember the name of the woman convicted of sex trafficking children for his late friend Jeffrey Epstein. No joke followed. The pause was the punchline. Meanwhile, the attempt to cancel Kimmel's show had produced an unexpected alliance. When the administration moved against ABC, threatening regulatory action, flagging the affiliate relationship for FCC review, applying the specific pressure that exists at the intersection of government authority and corporate leverage, the pushback came from a direction nobody had anticipated. Ted Cruz. Colbert reported this with the expression of a man who has been handed a gift so strange he is not entirely sure how to hold it. Cruz had publicly objected, had characterized the approach in specific terms. The threat to pull ABC's broadcast license. The framing, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, applied by a sitting government to a private media organization for the content of its programming. That is right out of Goodfellas, Colbert said. A mafioso walking into a bar, going, "Nice place you have here. Be a shame if something happened to it." He let the audience laugh. Ted Cruz was defending Jimmy Kimmel. Another pause. I need a minute. When Kimmel appeared on Colbert's show, the two men had a conversation that briefly dropped below the comedy into something direct. Colbert asked the question plainly, did Kimmel ever imagine, at any point in his career, that the President of the United States would publicly celebrate the prospect of him losing his job and his staff losing theirs? Kimmel was quiet for a moment. That son of a... He stopped, adjusted. His royal... Yes. He looked at Colbert. I never imagined we'd have a president like this, and I hope we never have another one. Because a leader who takes genuine pleasure in hundreds of Americans losing their jobs, who celebrates that is the absolute opposite of what this office is supposed to be. No audience laughter at that one. Just the specific quiet of a room that has shifted from entertainment into something that needed to be said in a room and heard by the people in it. And through all of it, the ballroom kept getting discussed. The drinks, the cocktails, the senators are walking in. The ballroom, the likes of which had never been topped. The grand entrance, the formal staircase, the architectural drawings spread across a table somewhere, while the east wing sat partially demolished, and the Treasury Department employees kept their phones in their pockets. Colbert described it precisely. His brain is filled with cotton candy fantasies of lavish princely soirees. The audience laughed. But underneath the laugh was the contrast that both hosts had been drawing all week between the specific obsessions occupying the most powerful office on earth and the questions that 50,000 documents were still sitting on, waiting for a clock to run out. Ballrooms and Epstein files, ratings and Maxwell pardons, official press releases about late-night television and the quiet instruction not to photograph the demolition next door. Kimmel at the Oscars, reading a post he had been told not to read, to a room full of the most famous people in the world, in front of an audience of millions, with the calm of someone who has already decided that the truth does not need to be delivered carefully. It just needs to be delivered. Isn't it past your jail time? 4 words. No anger in them. No performance of bravery. Just a comedian standing in the most expensive room in Hollywood, holding up a phone, reading someone else's words back to the world, and letting the room figure out for itself what the words revealed about the person who wrote them. That is the thing about mirrors. You do not have to argue with them. You just have to hold them steady. Subscribe if you believe comedy is the last place on television where someone is still saying the quiet part out loud. Turn on notifications, because the next document drops in 30 days, and when it does, there will be a monologue ready.